Welcome to Sewing with Sandy. Today we're going to do a sew along with 8559. This is McCall's. It's a denim skirt, super cute. It's got all the denim things, right? Patch pockets, coin pocket, back pockets, a waistband, big slit up the front, which you're seeing everywhere with these top stitching, the whole 9 yards. So this one I posted on Instagram a while ago. I made this to practice, and you can see, like, here's the coin pocket and the slash pockets. I didn't put the back pockets on this one, but the waistband, fly front, and then we have this split going up the front with all the top stitching detail going all around the skirt. I love this. I love this fabric. I've had it hanging around for the longest time waiting to make something with it, and this skirt seemed the perfect opportunity. I'll pop a picture of it up here. But yes, so I made it out of white denim, and I absolutely adore it. I didn't make any changes at all. This denim I've had in my stash for, when I say years, I mean like years. So there's no lycra, no spandex, nothing inside the denim. So when I cut it out, I cut the side seams, each side seam like a half, 3/4 of an inch bigger, because I was afraid it was going to be too small or too tight, and actually ended up taking that in a little bit, but I did need a little extra on the side seams. So give yourself some grace if you're not sure about the size, because before you put the waistband on, or before you even cut the waistband, cut them a little bit bigger and you can take them in. There's no top stitching on those. The rest of it's going to be centered anyway, so you need to do the pockets, the front seam, the fly front, and all of that, and then you can try it on and see if it fits the way you like it. So that's a little way to cheat with something like this denim twill. I mean, it's not going anywhere. It's on, it's there, you know, there's no stretch whatsoever in this outfit. So yeah, I just wanted to show you how to sew a denim skirt. Denim jeans are exactly the same, and let's get going. Let's get started. So I am using a denim twill. It's got a little bit of stretch to it, not much. I wouldn't call it a stretchy denim. It has very little elastane in it. And for this pocket piece, which is the side, front, and pocket, piece 3, I'm using a lining fabric. So the first thing you want to do is take piece 4, this is your pocket, and finish this edge. Because you're using a denim, if you're using something that doesn't ravel, then it won't be a problem, but the denim is going to ravel definitely. So you want to finish that edge, and then you want to stitch it down right near that finished edge all the way around. So it's part of the pocket assembly now. And then also I want to baste within the seam allowance on these edges, because that makes it one unit. So when I'm sewing it together, it will be super easy. Now the next step is to take piece 5, which is this little coin pocket. I finished all the way around the edges. It tells you to finish the bottom edge. Eventually you're gonna have to finish them all. So I did them all, and then we're going to do a small hem on the top edge. All right, so I finished the top edge of that's the straight edge opposite this curve down here at the bottom. And then I'm going to fold in the seam allowances. So the seam allowances are 5/8 of an inch. I took a little bit off, so my seam allowances are more like 3/8 of an inch. And then on the right side, so if you look at the picture in the diagram, right, you want to make sure you're using the correct piece. This darker shaded area means it's the right side up. So I'm going to copy the diagram, and you can lay your little tissue piece number 5 back down, and you can see these dots here. That's where that coin piece should be added on. Make sure it's nice and straight, and that the bottom of the coin pocket falls in line with the bottom edge of this pocket seam that I sewed here. And when I stitch this down, I'm going to do a double row of stitching here. I want to make sure that my little pieces on the inside, you don't see them, that they're down below. You don't want them popping out. right? You don't want it to look like that when you stitch it down. That would look terrible. So you want to make sure that those are pushed down in. So take a little care in getting that. All right, we have piece 1, and we're going to do the same thing for piece 3. When you cut these pieces, you only cut one of them. So make sure that everything is right side up, or you're going to have backwards pieces, which will just complicate everything. I have my little pocket assembly. I stitched this down. This is my coin pocket, and basted it down here so it's all connected. And now I'm going to add it to piece 1, and I'm going to do the same thing to piece 3. So I'm putting this right sides together, and I'm going to stitch this curve up here. It's very confusing if you've never done one of these before. So here's piece 3. This is the other side of my front, and I've stitched this seam here, and you can see that my fashion fabric is right sides together. So I've stitched this. I'm going to clip it. I've stitched it and I finished it. I'm going to go in and clip it so I can turn it, and I'm going to press it all towards the pocket, and then stitch the seam and the pocket, the seam allowance and the pocket together, because what that will do, that's under stitching, that will give me a really nice opportunity to turn this and get a nice crisp edge. Press it, then I'm going to top stitch it so it'll look like this. I'll show you when we get there, but it'll look like this. I want to show you where we're going, and then because we've sewn this correctly, we can pull our pocket back up from underneath, and we're going to have this really nice pocket. That's how you do it. So I sewed my pocket on and pressed it back, and then understitched it. So I stitched right here, you can see I stitched the seam allowance to the pocket, so it's all stitched together. And then once you do that, it gives you this really nice structure to be able to turn your pocket under and press it, and what you're left with is this, a gorgeous pocket. So I went back and top stitched so it doesn't roll out, and I have a absolutely beautiful pocket. Now I want to make my pocket. So this is the wrong side because I have my pocket here. I'm going to fold this pocket bag up, and you have these little diagonals here. You want to stitch that closed away from the skirt, and you want to stitch this seam, this pocket seam on this side closed away from the skirt. So you're going to stitch this little seam here, this little corner, and stitch this so this is all loose from the pocket. Then you want to go, after that's stitched, you want to go back and you want to baste these together, because what you have in the front now is this beautiful pocket, but you want to make this one unit here on the side. This is flopping around, and we go to sew our pieces together, it's going to be more difficult to sew. So just within the seam allowance, you just want to stitch along here and along here, just so that pocket bag is connected to the front and it's all one. We're going to get into a little area that a lot of people haven't done before, and that's a fly front. They're not that tricky. They just take a little time, and you need to go slow. In conjunction with that, this skirt has this angle going on here where the stitching is in the front, so we have to deal with that also. So it looks like you took a pair of jeans and turned them back into a skirt. So one of the first things we want to do on the piece with the pocket, with the little coin pocket, so this is our right front, you want to stitch at this notch. Just do a little safety stitch. That helps to keep it from unraveling, and then we're going to clip to the corner there, to that dot on the pattern piece. I'm going to open that up because we want to be able to turn that a little bit. The instructions here are pretty good. You just follow them step by step, but we're going to go do it together. So we're going to sew piece 1 and piece 3 together, and you can see how we have this notch coming out in the other piece. I'm going to pin it all the way because I want to make sure that my pieces end up being the same length. And you can see I have to make this over and under piece go together, but I don't want to get to the bottom and have my skirt be cattywampus like this. So I'm just going to throw pins in here just so I know they're not going anywhere. So we're going to stitch this section between these two large dots, because above here is where our zipper goes and below here is where the split is. I'm just going to rest this. If you haven't marked your fabric already, I'm just going to rest this on my pattern piece and put a pin where the large dot is here and the large dot is here at the angle. So that is the section that I want to stitch together. Now, when I'm stitching something where I have to start and stop at a separate place, I put 2 pins in, and then that way I know that I have to start and stop there, so I don't go beyond. And then, you know, I can take these pins out now that at my top and my bottom, because I know now that they're going to be the right length. What I want to do is make these pieces come together. So I'm just going to take my time and make the raw edges of the 2 front pieces come together. Now, when you get to this spot where we have the point and the indentation, you have to make them fit, right? And that's why we clipped the seam. But you also need to make sure, and I'm checking the piece underneath so I don't get any rumples here. And sometimes you have to go back and just repin a little, right? But we want that clip and that triangle to come together, because we're going to have that overlap on the front. Okay, so you can see, put one more pin in there. So you can see I have my double pins. I go all the way up to where this triangle is and go back all the way up to my other set of double pins. And on the back side, I want to make sure that when I sew this, that it's nice and flat. So sewing a convex and a concave seam is a little tricky, and you're going to get to where you've cut this and you're going to pivot a little. I would go back and forth just once, just because that fabric has now been cut and it's kind of loose, but we want to make sure to take care that we get that part done. Okay, see, I stitched that and I pressed it to the left. So I pressed it flat first and then opened it up and pressed it to the left. Now, the easiest way to remember is that this coin pocket is on the right side, because we're going to do a lot of right and left with pressing and sewing. So if you remember that the coin pocket's always on the right, when it's face up, you'll be in good shape. But you can see how I have this nice curve effect going in the front, and once we top stitch that, it'll look just like we took apart a pair of jeans and made them into a skirt. So the next thing we want to do is on the right side, the side with the coin pocket, I'm going to flip it around, is press this seam allowance on the inside. Okay, so you have what looks like a finished edge now on your right hand side. All right, then you're going to take a regular zipper. You don't want to use an invisible zipper, you want to use a regular zipper. Now the Joann's is gone. I buy my zippers on Amazon. I get them in big bundles. The black and white ones are here. And then I also buy like a huge variety pack of colors. And as long as you can, the colored ones are long there, and I just cut them to the length I need them. Now we're going to put this zipper face up, and we're going to stitch it so the top edge of the the zigzag edge of the zipper meets the top edge of our pants, and we're gonna stitch this right along the edge of that zipper. Line that up really, really well. Using your zipper foot, you're gonna stitch this right along the teeth here. It's easiest to sew it in, obviously with the zipper open, and every time I sew something with the zipper, I go back and close it up to make sure that I haven't like gone over the zipper teeth, because going backwards is a challenge. All right, so now you have your zipper attached to the right-hand side of your trousers, or your skirt in this case. All right, here is piece 6. This is our fly front. We're going to fold it right sides together and stitch this little curved edge down here. Okay, I stitched that curved edge. I trimmed it because there's a lot of bulk there, and if you're using a heavy denim, you're gonna wanna get rid of some of that excess. You can zigzag stitch it or use it with the overlocker, but we're gonna turn it inside right, make that nice and pretty, press it, and we're going to baste these raw edges together so it just makes one single unit. All right, so now we're gonna attach our fly guard. And this goes on the inside. This is so you don't zip yourself when you're zipping your zipper. So here's the, my skirt is face up. I have the raw edge of my guide, and I'm gonna slide it underneath the zipper tape. Essentially what I wanna do is attach this guard going over this same stitching that I did once here. So it's going to sit behind the zipper as a guard. That's what it's gonna look like when it's finished. So in order to do that, I wanna pin it to the zipper. But I really wanna stitch it from this side because I wanna be able to see where I stitched it before. So I just need to make sure that when I pin it, I have enough, and this is getting really heavy, but I have enough of the fabric from the guard that it's actually in the seam allowance, right? And you can finish the edge of that to make it nice and neat from the inside. But from the inside, you can see I've covered the zipper tape, right? And on the outside, so when I go ahead and top stitch this again, stitching through where I've already stitched, it will be attached, and I won't it won't be cattywampus, and I won't miss any of it. So here I have this nice guard attached to my zipper. I'm going to, again, just zip up my zipper just to make sure I didn't go over any of the teeth. So we haven't done anything to this left side yet, all right? But this right side is looking pretty good. All right, so now we're gonna do some work on the left side. We have piece 7, which is our left fly facing, and I have finished the curved edge on this. There is a dot here, which is where you're supposed to stop stitching. Dot on the pattern. I make sure that it's in line with this, because this is really what it needs to be in line with. But we're going to apply this facing to the left front. A little trickier than it sounds. It sounds easy. You know, you're working with heavy fabric here. See, now you can see that dot actually ends up exactly in the crotch, which is exactly where the crotch of the seam, which is exactly where I want to stop stitching. You got to get the zipper out of the way and make sure that you line everything up to get right into that seam where you stopped stitching before. It's not an easy task. Sometimes you may have to go in with a needle and thread. If you can't get it, so you're happy with it and there's a pucker in there, just take a needle and thread and fix it that way. Okay, our left piece is attached. All right, this little section here There's no bubbles or puckers or pleats in there, so we can move forward. So we're going to trim this edge. You can overlock it or zigzag it or trim it, and then understitch it, which means we're going to press the fly facing to the seam allowance, and we're going to stitch the fly facing to the seam allowance right close to the seam. But you want to make sure it's pressed really well, because what that'll do is that'll help us turn it around. Okay. I finished the edge of my zipper, my seam allowance, and then I stitched the seam allowance really close, the seam allowance to this facing really close. All right. So the biggest trick with sewing a fly is to making sure you don't get other parts caught into the parts that they don't need to be caught into. So now, because I have understitched that, that's the problem with working with white, I already have black on here. Because I've understitched that, I can press this and get a really good turn on it, right? How beautiful is that turn? And now we're going to finish up our fly. So the left front is going to overlay over the zipper on the right front. And we want to pin that in place. We want this all nice and smooth and flat. But we want it to cover the stitching and the zipper. And we're just going to put some pins here to hold it so it's where we want, so we know it's where we want it. Clips don't work really well for this. You really need pins. All right, now you can baste this if you're a little worried. I pin basted this. I'm okay with the pin basting, but if you want to hand baste this so it doesn't move, then if that makes you more comfortable, just make sure you use the big stitch, because you're going to have to pull it out. All right, that's really important. This looks great. I'm happy with the way this looks. Now I need to stitch the zipper to the left side, right? My zipper is attached to the right piece, but not to the left piece. So I need to fold, this is the wrong side we're looking at now, right? I need to fold this facing that's on the right side out of the way, and I want to attach the zipper to that facing that I just put on. So this gets a little tricky. I would do it from the back side. You need a zipper foot. It's easier to do this if the zipper is closed, but it's really hard to get by this tab at the beginning. So if you start at the bottom down here and stitch this way and make sure that it's nice and close, you can always baste it and go back. Then when you get up here, you can open up the zipper and finish the rest of this. Because if you don't and you try to go by the zipper head, your stitches are going to go off to the side. The other option is to just unzip it now and stitch it this way. But you want to make sure that it's close enough that you don't get a bubble in there, right? You don't want this to collapse on itself, but you don't want it so close that it's going to buckle either, so it's kind of tricky. I tend to sew it partially and then unzip it, but certainly this is another mess. But you have to get that zipper head out of the way, or else you just won't be able to sew it. So sew this down. Out. Pins. Sew this down, and we'll come back and take a look. All right, so that edge of the zipper is just sewn to this one piece. And in order to check it, I need to take these pins out. I need to zip it back up again. Okay, it zips, that's good. This coverage is still good, right? I want to make sure that laps over, that's important. So, and my zipper goes up and down, and my pants are free. And make sure you don't catch this zipper guard in anything, because it will become a problem if you catch that in there and then you can't open them, right? I'm going to pin this back down again and leave the zipper up this time, but I don't want this going anywhere when I go to sew the decorative stitches on, right? I don't want it moving on me. Let's throw my pins back in there. All right, I really like the way that looks. So what we're gonna do now is sew the fly stitching. So you're going to make a decision about where that fly stitching is gonna go. You can use this. If you have an old zipper cardboard, on the zipper, on a classic zipper, this is a Coats and Clark, you can see when you open up this zipper package, you have two options. You have a skinny option and a wide option to use to mark on your fabric. That's exactly what that's for. Either one will work. You're going to mark it on here. You're gonna do a row of stitching and then do another row of stitching. Now you want to make sure you're gonna be top stitching this all the way around, which is 2 rows of stitching for that denim look. So whatever you use for a gauge now will be setting the stage for the gauge that you're going to use for the rest of the stitching. I mean, I stitched these pretty close together on this little pocket here. That's what I'm going to use. I'm going to use this stitching that's really close together because I used my foot with the bar in it. So it'll be the same all the way around. So we're going to go ahead and top stitch this. You need to make sure that the fly facing is in the right place, right? That's going to stay here, but this flange needs to be out of the way because we don't want to stitch that down. We won't be able to unzip our pants if we, I mean, we can unzip them, but we won't be able to open them. So from the inside, you have one piece going one way and one piece going the other way. So we're going to go ahead and do our top stitching. And our zipper is done. Well done. Wowie, and our zipper is done. So I went around here and did 2 rows of stitching. I'm going to take my guide pins out. I also top stitched across here so my facing wasn't flopping around, but you can see that my zipper opens up beautifully. On the inside, my zipper's too long. I don't want that all flopping around in there. I don't need that extra in there. So I did a bar tack across the bottom of the zipper, and I'm just gonna cut it off. This is a plastic zipper. Don't do this with a metal zipper, obviously. And you need to put the tack in there, so just in case for some reason the head of the zipper gets down that far, it won't sail off because then your zipper will be ruined. But there we go. And you can put a bar tack here if you want to. I don't think I'm going to, but we'll see how hard it is to get on and off. If there's going to be stress there, then I would put a bar tack there. But yeah, my zipper is done. Yes. Okay, so the hardest part is done. The pockets and the zipper. Really, those required more work than anything else. We'll move on to our back pieces now. And just like we did with the front, we're going to reinforce this seam because we have that same kind of cross piece going on over there. Then after we do that, we're going to attach our yokes. So this is piece 8, face up, piece 9, face up. And our yokes are piece 11. And these, pay attention to these notches here, right? You want the yoke going on the right way because it's an angled piece. You want to make sure that you get it going the way it's supposed to be going. So this piece is going to get attached this way, and then conversely, this one is going to get attached this way. So now I'm happy with all of my pieces. I can take away my tissue, and I'm just going to pin these yoke pieces on. So I'm going to stitch both of these. I'm going to press them so the seams go towards the yoke, and then I'm going to do my 2 rows of top stitching, encasing the seam on that. While I have that at the machine, I'm also going to work on my back patch pockets. Piece 10. So I have 2 of these pockets. and I want to make, this is the right side, I want to form a hem here on the top. So however you want to do that, I'm going to overlock it and then turn it over and put a row of top stitching on that pocket. All right, let's talk pockets. I have one of my back pockets on. I'm going to show you how I did it. So I finished all the edges of my pocket. These pockets are not symmetrical. If you look at this pattern piece, there's a short edge and a longer edge in the bottom. So when you're doing this top hem, you need to make super sure that your fabric is face up, because you need mirror images of these pockets. They're not the same. All right, so that's the first thing. Turned it under the top edge and top stitched it. Then I went back and pressed all my edges in. And you want to make sure when you're pressing that these top edges are lower, just a smidge lower than your finished edge up at the top, because you don't want this little seam allowance popping out. It will look crummy for sure. All right, now that you've done that, you're ready to apply it to your pants. And like I said, you want to make sure that you apply the long edge towards the center back. I'm going to take my tissue and line it up with my, wrong tissue. I'm going to take my tissue and line it up with my pattern. And I'm going to use this as a reference. My skirt is a little bit wider because I cut the side seams just a smidge wider so it would fit. And what you can see up here are the dots that you want to match your pocket to. So I'm going to just lay my pocket down underneath here. Make sure my tissue's in the right place, and I'm going to align my pocket with the dots that are there as best I can. I'm going to throw a pin in that just to keep it in place for now, a couple pins, because I want to make sure that it lines up with the pocket that I had on the other side. Right? That's the most important thing. I want these two pockets need to be mirror images of each other, regardless of where the dots are on here. Where I put that first pocket on, that needs to be in line with this pocket. So I'm just going to pin my center back seam. Pretend that I sewed this up so I can look and see, look at that my pockets are lined up horizontally, right? And they're the same distance. I mean, you could get a tape measure out if you really wanted to, that they're the same distance from each other. So I'm going to go ahead and top stitch this pocket. Just like I did this one. 2 rows of top stitching all the way around, except for the top, right? You don't want to top stitch that. It looks gorgeous. Now this you can have fun with. You could do patch pockets. You could, if you had an embroidery machine, you could embroider a design on there. You could do, if you're into quilting, you could make a nice little quilt pattern. It would be really cute there. That would be something that you could do that would make it very individual. And then what we're going to do is, just like we sewed the front, we're going to sew this center back seam. I have reinforced my little indentation here. I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to sew this seam all the way to the hem. So it's not, the skirt is not open in the back, it's just open in the front. So I'm going to sew that. I am going to press it to the left side, and I'm going to put 2 rows of top stitching along my center back seam. Look at that, the back of our skirt is done. I wanted to mention one more thing about the pockets. When you're back stitching here at the top, you don't want to be back stitching on the pant or the skirt itself. You want to do the back stitching, the anchoring stitch on the pocket, because if it's up here, it's going to rip. You know, if you keep putting your hands in it, you've had those, right? There's a big hole right here at the top of the pocket. That's because it's anchored to this part of the fabric. It should be anchored to itself down there. So I stitched this center back. Boy, this white denim picks up everything. I stitched my seam, And you have this really nice, interesting curve here now. My pockets look great. Everything looks terrific. I'm happy with it. Now I'm going to sew the front to the back at the side seams. And I was a little unsure about the stretch of this denim, so I cut this skirt about 2 inches wider than I normally would because this denim doesn't have a ton of stretch, and I wanted to make sure it fit. So I'm going to stitch up the side seams, and now is the time to try it on. Once I'm happy with the way the side seams are, then we'll move forward. But I want to make sure that there's enough circumference, and if there's too much circumference, then I can take it in and go back to the regular size that the pattern was. But I wanted to give myself a little breathing room, if you will. So yeah, we're going to sew the side seams and try it on. Okay, I tried it on a skirt. It's great. Everything looks terrific. The zipper works really well. The back is done. Everything looks amazing. So I am glad I added a little extra here because it doesn't stretch too much. So that works out really well. We're going to make our belt carriers now, and we're going to make them by folding. The method that I like to use is to fold them in half, wrong sides together, and press this, and that gives me this line down the middle. Then I can fold in my side edges to the line and press them, and then fold them this way, and then we're going to top stitch on both sides on the edges, and then we're going to cut them. So we need 5 3.5 inch long strips. So we're going to make one big strip and then slice them up. Alright, I sewed up my little tabs and cut them into 3.5 inch long strips, and then you want to attach them based on the little circle dots in your size. Here, they're on the front, left front, right front, and on the yoke pieces, those dots, those marking dots. What you want to make sure of is that they are the same distance from the top of your raw edge here all the way around. All right, I pinned the front ones. I haven't sewn those yet, and you're just going to stitch across them, back tack across them. Stitched my waistband on. It looks beautiful. Edged the seam, pressed it towards the waistband. Look at how nice that looks. I'm so happy. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our belt tabs and fold them up and just tack them up here. You can baste them. Make sure that they're not pulling, and make sure that they're straight up and down. Also, so you can see I've stitched these. These look great because we're going to sew the facing on here. This one's too short. It's in the wrong place, so I'm just going to unpick this. Now's the time to do it. You see it didn't come up the same as the other one, so it ended up being a little bit lower when I sewed it on. So I'm going to take this one out and fix it now. Once those are all good and we're happy, you want to finish one edge of your waistband facing, and then pin this so the unfinished edge matches the top of the waistband that's already attached to your skirt all the way around. So that's after you sew these. You want to make sure these are all sewed on first. All right, I attached my waistband facing. You want to stitch all the way around the top. You want to stitch down this front section and fold up the inside of this facing. I didn't press it ahead of time because I usually end up repressing it, so I just press it when I'm done. But you definitely want to fold it up and meet this section right here. So this is all a nice clean line, and go all the way off. Please don't pivot. You won't get a really nice corner there, but now I have a really nice square corner. So I'm going to go trim these seams, and then when you turn your facing to the other side, to make a nice corner, you want to fold down one side, fold down the other side, and I would press this at this point. And then I'm going to get inside the facing. Remember, this is bulky at this point in time. But look at how beautiful that corner is. And that's without even pressing it or anything. So those are perfect corners. And then you can go in and turn this edge under and slip stitch it all the way around to close up that seam. Before you do that, so you're going to turn that corner. You have this beautiful corner, right? You're going to turn that corner. Then you're going to understitch, press, right? Understitch. So we fixed our seams. We've overlocked them or trimmed them. And we're going to understitch. So we're going to stitch the seams to the facing that we just sewed on. Then we're going, so that will give us a really nice edge on our waistband, which is looking pretty good. And then we're going to turn in that bottom section and hand stitch that to the seam allowance so it's all nice and clean on the inside. Then this calls for top stitching on the outside, 1 row of top stitching up here around the top of the waistband. So I'm going to do that and put a button and a buttonhole in my front. And then our final deed. Okay, then we're just going to finish up what we have left. We're going to hem the dress, turn in 5/8 of an inch or whatever hem you would like. And then we're going to double row top stitch this front seam and then finish this seam, or just this opening. We're going to turn that under and top stitch that. And you want to do the hem first, because that way when you look at it, if it flies open, you have this really nice curve going on because you've top stitched this split section last. And that's the end. So let's see how she looks.